And at the day of Saqifa, when the Sahaba, they gathered and they conspired against Amir al-Mu'mineen, he took out his sword and he said, my bay'ah, my allegiance is for Ali ibn Abi Talib. If you give your allegiance to anyone else, you will taste my sword. Of course, they jumped him, they beat him, and they broke his sword. Az-Zubayr was a fierce defender of the Ahlul Bayt. And we shall mention how when Fatima Zahra gave her will to Amir al-Mu'mineen to bury her at night, for no one to witness her funeral, she said, Ya Ali, if you can't do this for me, then I will ask Zubayr to do this for me. Now you realize what a huge champion Az-Zubayr was? Az-Zubayr was tested the last days of his life with power. It was tested with power. Muawiyah tells him that I have 30,000 troops here in Damascus giving their allegiance to you. But all you have to do is fight Ali ibn Abi Talib and kill him. If you kill him, you will become the Khalifa. Az-Zubayr was fooled. He fell in the trap. He was tricked. And he led a battle against Ali ibn Abi Talib. He stood all his life with Ali ibn Abi Talib. At the last minute, he turned against him. And he died. When he died, Amir al-Mu'mineen cried for him. Amir al-Mu'mineen cried for Az-Zubayr. They brought him the sword of Az-Zubayr. Amir al-Mu'mineen took the sword and he kissed it. And he said, Sayfun ta'lama kashafa al-karb an wajh Rasulullah. This is a sword that defended Rasulullah for so many years. Yeah, look at the result. Isn't it very unfortunate that someone lives a good life, a religious life for so many years, but a simple test turns him apart. It turns. عند الامتحان يكرم المرء أو يهان. At tests, some people pass the test and they are recognized. Some people, they fail the test. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among the ones that pass the test. To pass these exams. And not to test us at the end of our lives. You see, my dear brothers and sisters, Allah tests people with different things. Depending on our weak points. What's your weak point? What's my weak point? Allah knows our weaknesses. For some people, Allah tests them with money because money is their weakness. They can't say no to money. If they see money, money is enticing for them. They'll fail. Allah tests people with their money. Some people, Allah tests them with political positions. He doesn't care about money, but if he's put in a political position, he'll fail the test. Some people are tested with children. Allah tests them with abundance of children. Our children are a test. The Quran says this, إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةً. Our children and our wealth are a form of fitna. Fitna means test. Allah tests us with our children. How do we raise our children? Do we raise our children in a proper manner, in an Islamic manner, or no? We turn our wives into manufacturing companies of children, and they bring us a lot of children, and that's it. How are they raised? How do we bring them up? Who cares? This is a test. This is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our children are a test to us. Some people, Allah tests them with no children. With no children. For some people, Allah doesn't give them any child. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of couples who've been married for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Allah doesn't give them children. This is a test. Allah tests their faith. Allah tests their patience. And some, Allah gives them a child every year. That's a form of test. My father says that he had a classmate many years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. He said, I had a colleague and a classmate who was poor. He was a student in the Hawza. Most Hawza students generally are poor because they don't have any group or anything to support them. Usually they're poor. He said there was a Sayyid, a scholar, and a student as well, who was very poor. He was the imam of a masjid, a small masjid. they gave him a room on top of the masjid. Just one bedroom. That's it. This bedroom was their bedroom, it was their living room, it was their kitchen, it was their everything. And on top of that, he had 8 children. In one room, he had 8 children. And his wife would become pregnant every year. Every year she would get pregnant and give birth. He said, me and my friends, we went and told him, you know what? You need to relax a little bit. Take a year off. Your wife's getting pregnant every year, and you don't even have a room. You don't have room anymore. To the point that he said some of his children, they would sleep next to the window, like over there. Because there was no more room on the ground. He said, we told him, maybe perhaps you should think about not having children. This year, don't have a child. He said he took our advice. That year, he didn't have any children. The following year, his wife got pregnant, and when she delivered to twins. Allah told him, you missed out this year, I'll give it to you the next year. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This is a test. This is also a test. When you have children, it's a test. When you don't have children, it's a test. Our money is a test. Our political positions are a test. Our jobs are a test. We're being tested every day, my dear brothers and sisters. And some people, they're tested with illness, with a sickness. There was a brother yesterday, we were at a gathering, the brother's not here today. He was telling me about all the agonies and the problems and the troubles that he witnessed all his life. He participated in the Iran-Iraq war on the Iranian side against Saddam. He said that Saddam used chemical weapons on us to the point that I inhaled chemical, what do you call it? Whatever it is, chemical weapons or whatever it was, gas or whatever. He said, I developed leukemia. Leukemia. And then he tried to flee. He went to Russia. I don't know, God knows how many places he went, in Indonesia and here and there, until he ended up in Australia on a ship. So many difficulties. This is a test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests our patience, our faith, our iman. This could be a possible reason. Another reason, my dear brothers and sisters, some of the problems that we face in our lives, some of the obstacles and the tragedies that we face in our lives, they build us. They build us. They build our character. They build our responsibility. They build our personality. Can a doctor become a doctor without studying? I want to become a doctor. Can I just go and announce myself as a doctor tomorrow? No way. I have to go study for at least 8 years, 9 years, depending on which country, depending on what specialty. You have to study. I want to become the president. Will the presidency come to me immediately? I have to earn it. I have to work hard. I have to sleep. I have to spend sleepless nights in order to reach a position that I want to reach. There's a famous saying that says, وَمَنْ طَلَبَ الْعُلَى سَهَرَ اللَّيَالِ. You want to become someone, you can't sleep all night and all day and expect yourself to be someone important. A professor, or an important politician, or a doctor, or a scholar, or a manager, or a mujtahid. Becoming someone important requires a lot of work. It doesn't come easy. There are some people, my dear friends, that are very spoiled. They expect to live a comfortable life, an easy life, sitting under the AC, with electricity all the time. You know, the past 24 hours or whatever that I'm here, I'm not used to having electricity all the time. Because I come from a country where most of the time we don't have electricity. Having electricity is a privilege. For some people, they're used to it. They cannot have some friends when they come from other countries to Iraq. They can't handle it. If the electricity goes out for 10 minutes, for 15 minutes, especially in the summer, they go crazy. They say, how do you handle it? I tell them, we get used to it after a while. Even in the middle of the night, if you don't have electricity for 2 hours, yes, the first couple of months, you might get up and you might even start swearing and cursing. But after a while, it becomes easy. It becomes a piece of cake. Some people are too spoiled. Everything has to be ready for them. Their food has to be warm and ready. Their clothing, someone else washes it for them. Their car has to be a comfortable car. Their house has to be a comfortable house. Their bedroom, their bed, their pillow, everything has to be perfect. These people are too spoiled. Believe me, such people will not be able to face life and the challenges of life. Some parents, they think that if they provide everything for their children, whatever the child asks for, they have to provide it. They don't allow their children to work. When your child becomes 16, 17, send them out. Let them work. Let them get a job. Don't think that if you spend on your children and you don't let your child get a job, you're doing a service. This is a disservice to your children. You're not serving them. Because the most successful people in life are those that earned it, are those that face difficulties and problems and obstacles and challenges. They weren't spoiled. Read about the most successful people in our times. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, a person who has done a great service to humanity, whether we'd like to recognize it or not. In fact, a person who changed our life, Steve Jobs. Read about his life. Read about what sort of upbringing he had. A child that was raised without a father. He didn't even know who his father was. He was treated like an orphan. He saw all the misery in the world. From house to house, from a shelter to another shelter. Until he was adopted. And then things came from him. But as a child, things were rough. Yet Steve Jobs became Steve Jobs. He became one of the most influential men in our history, in our time, in our era. Thus, sometimes we need to face difficulties. We need to face challenges. We need to face problems in our lives. We can't live a life of being spoiled. We'll fail. We won't succeed. If a person comes out without seeing the reality of life, this person will not succeed in life. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam has a very beautiful quote. One of his companions by the name of Uthman ibn Hunayf was the governor of Basra. Uthman ibn Hunayf made a mistake, made a simple mistake. His mistake was that he was invited to a feast, to a gathering where only the rich were invited, the poor were not invited. Uthman ibn Hunayf goes, and he attends and he eats. Now, is this a huge problem? Is this a big problem? No. If someone rich invites you to their house and only the rich people are invited, this is not haram, this is not a sin. Yet Amir al-Mu'mineen wants to discipline his companions. He wants to discipline them. Especially a governor. A governor who needs to feel the pain of the people. He needs to feel the suffering of the people. Not like our friends right now in the Middle East. The politicians who live above the people and have no idea how people are suffering. There are some politicians in Iraq, I know, that have electricity 24 hours a day. While others, they might have 7 or 8 hours of electricity. These people, they have to have 24 hours of electricity. Everything to them comes easy. Amir al-Mu'mineen wanted to discipline his companions. He sent him a letter. He sent him a letter rebuking him, scolding him, yelling at him. Why would you attend a feast where only the rich are invited, the poor are not invited? And then he tells him, be like me. You have an imam, you have a role model. Learn to be like me. And then he says, your imam has only 2 pieces of bread each day. And I wish that there was soft bread that just came out of the oven. No. It was dry bread that it might even break some people's teeth if they tried to eat it. And then Amir al-Mu'mineen says, but some people ask, how can I be so strong in battle? Because Amir al-Mu'mineen was a champion. Amir al-Mu'mineen, in the battlefield, he was a champion. Some people might ask, how could Amir al-Mu'mineen be such a champion in the battlefield? By eating 2 loaves of bread a day, dry bread. Try doing that, and look at the end of the day, will you have any energy? You won't have any energy. That's why people during Ramadan, they usually sleep during the day. Why? Because they have no energy, they haven't eaten anything. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, let me give you an example of how you take little, but you can give so much. He says, وَإِنَّ الشَّجَرَةَ الْبَرِّيَّةَ لَأَصْلَ قُعُودٍ. Have you seen trees in the desert? Trees in the desert are stronger than the trees in the forest. Even though a tree in the forest receives a lot of irrigation, it receives a lot of water because it rains a lot in the forest. And in the desert, it doesn't rain, just a little bit. Yet this tree in the desert that receives little irrigation is a lot stronger than the tree in the forest. Why? Because it learned how to survive. This tree has learned how to survive with very little water. While the tree in the forest, it receives so much water, so much rain, go and push it. That slightest storm could drop so many trees. These challenges, these obstacles and problems, these things, they build us. They build our personality and character. They make us stronger, my dear brothers and sisters. Thus, this is a blessing from Allah. When Allah gives us such problems and difficulties, they build us. Thus, they are a blessing. They are a blessing from Allah. We need to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa alihi. And finally, such obstacles in our lives, they raise our status. For some people. For some people, some special people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them trials and tribulations and problems and illnesses to raise their level in the next life. Allah says, handle these problems and difficulties in this life for a while, but in the next life you'll have a much better place. صبروا أياما قليلة أعقبتهم راحة طويلة. Some people are patient with these agonies and problems and troubles in this life. For a couple of days, this life will end. No matter how good it is, it will end. And no matter how bad it is, it'll end. Whether you're enjoying this life or you're not. One day will come, it'll end. Like a movie. When you go to the movies, and you're watching the movie and you pay $10 or whatever, sometimes it's a good movie, sometimes it's a bad movie. But at the end, after an hour and a half or 2 hours, this movie's going to end. This life will also end. But those who face these problems and trials and tribulations, in the next life, they will have a better life. That is why the people that face the most problems in this life, don't say, why is it just me? Why do these things just happen to me? Why did I have to face so many problems? Why did I have to get on a ship and risk my life and the life of my family and my children and come to this country? Why is it that my family members, why does my son, for example, have leukemia or cancer? Why not someone else? Know that the best of us face problems and face trials and tribulations. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, إن أشد الناس ابتلاء هم الأنبياء. Prophets face the most problems and difficulties. Did you ever hear of a prophet that lived a good life? That lived a jolly life? Read about the lives of all prophets, you will see that their lives were hard, full of hardships and difficulties. They were either killed, or poisoned, or massacred, or lived in poverty. All of them. Read about their lives. None of the prophets, they had a good time and were partying all the time. None of them. Same goes for the imams. Read about the lives of our imams. Were our imams having a good time? Their life was full of sorrow and agony and problems. And these were the best of the best. Why? Because it raises their status. Allah says, be patient a little bit in this life, but in the next life you'll have a much better life. In fact, some ahadith tell us that those who face the most problems are the believers. Are the believers. You might have a neighbor, an Australian neighbor, who's a kafir, who might not even believe in Allah, who's an atheist. But this person has a good life. He has a good house, he has a nice car, he has a good salary, good job. He might travel every weekend. He might even own a yacht. And he goes on vacations, but he doesn't believe in Allah. But you as a believer, you face all sorts of obstacles. You might not even remember when was the last time you went on a vacation. Does that mean that you're bad and he's good? Absolutely not. There's a hadith that tells us that problems and obstacles are for the believers only. وَهَلْ يُبْتَلَى إِلَّا الْمُؤْمِنِ? In a hadith, that these problems and trials and tribulations, they're only for the believers so that Allah can reward them. In another hadith, Allah says, the hadith says that Allah promises the believer to give him pain and trouble and problems the same way a husband promises his wife when he goes on a travel, when he goes on a journey, he promises her to bring her a gift. Allah promises the believer to give him problems and obstacles. That's if the husband brings a gift for his wife. Some don't even think of doing such a thing. The hadith says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَتَعَاهَدُ الْمُؤْمِنِ بِالْبَلَاءِ كَمَا يَتَعَاهَدُ الرَّجُلُ أَهْلَهُ بِالْهَدِيَةِ مِنَ الْغَيْبِ. Allah promises him to send him problems and tribulations. In another hadith, that if a mu'min runs away from the city and goes and hides in a mountain, Allah will send him someone to bother him. Because he's a mu'min. Because Allah tests him. Allah wants him to have a better place in the next life. In another hadith, الْمُؤْمِنْ كُلَّمَا زَادَ فِي إِيمَانِهِ زِيدَ فِي بَلَائِهِ. That the more faith you have, the more your faith develops and becomes stronger, the more Allah will test you. The more Allah will test us. The more we will face problems and difficulties in our lives. Sometimes it's a gift, it's a blessing. For some, it's a punishment. For others, it's a test. For some, it's a way to build their character, and for some, it's to raise their status. إِنَّ أَشَدُّ النَّاسِ ابْتِلَاءً هُمُ الْأَنْبِيَاء. Prophets faced the worst types of difficulties. Read about the life of Zakaria. What happened to Zakaria? Zakaria was killed by his own people. Zakaria was about to be killed. He starts running and they run after him. He goes into a forest. He tries to run from his own people that wanted to kill him. He goes inside a tree. I don't know if you've noticed, in some places in the Middle East, there are huge trees that have holes in them. You could go inside. You could go and hide. I've seen such trees. In Turkey, in Istanbul, I've seen such trees. Zakaria went and he hid in the tree. They saw him. They saw him go and hide in the tree. They brought a saw and they started cutting the tree. And he's inside. They started cutting him. They cut him in the middle. He didn't even say ouch. They cut him in half. This was a prophet. What happened to his son Yahya? Yahya was killed by the king of his time. The king of his time wanted to marry a woman, and this woman had a very bad history, if you know what I mean. He wanted to marry her. He asked her, what would you like? He wanted to marry her, she refused. He kept on insisting, she refused. Her mother told her, I will marry you under one condition. You bring me the head of Yahya. Yahya, John the Baptist, who was a prophet. He agreed. He sends his people, they bring the head of Yahya, who was a prophet, to the king. Why? Because an adulteress wanted him to sin. Is there a tragedy more than this tragedy? Read about the lives of Yaqub, Yusuf, and all prophets. You will see that they face all these tragedies and problems. Yet the one that faced the most amount of problems and difficulties was whom? Khatam al-Anbiya Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa. He says, "Ma udhiya nabiyyun mithla ma udhit." No prophet faced difficulties and problems the way that I did. Rasulullah faced so many problems. The years that he spent in Mecca, every day was a challenge for him. The way they denied him. They called him a liar, they called him a magician, they called him insane. They rejected him for so many years. They would stone him. He would go out of the house, he would come back bloody, bleeding. His entire body would be bleeding. This was in Mecca. He goes to Medina, he faced a different form of difficulties and problems. From his own people, his own Sahaba, his own companions, sometimes they would disrespect him. Some of them would object to him. Some of them would conspire against him. It is enough that one of his companions, when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi was on his deathbed, he told his companions, "Bring me something for me to write to you, a will. لن تضلوا بعده أبدا. أكتب لكم كتابا لن تضلوا بعده أبدا." Let me write you something, you'll never go astray. After this letter, what does that man stand up and say? To the face of Rasulullah. إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيَهْجُرُ. The man speaks nonsense. In the face of Rasulullah, he says, إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيَهْجُرُ. The man speaks nonsense. Isn't this a form of trial? Isn't this a problem for Rasulullah? For one of his companions, after serving them for 24 years, someone comes and tells him, "You speak nonsense?" Isn't this enough trouble? Isn't this enough pain for Rasulullah? Isn't it enough pain that for after his death, the Sahaba don't come to bury him and pray over him, yet they gather at Saqifa to conspire against him and to conspire against his family members, his son-in-law and his daughter? Isn't it enough pain for the Prophet to come to his house and the house of the Prophet and to threaten Fatima Zahra to burn her and to burn her house and to attack her and abuse her? Wasn't this pain for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? That's why he says, "Ma udiya nabiyyun mithla ma udhit." We mentioned what they did to Fatima Zahra. Fatima Zahra would weep day and night for her father. She would cry all the time. "My dear father, get up and look at what your nation has done to us. Look at how they took my inheritance, Fadak. Look at how they attacked the house. Look at what they did to my children. Look at what they did to my fetus. Look at what they did to my ribs." Ya Rasulullah. She would cry every day, from morning till night, until her neighbors, they came to Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. They told him, "Ya Ali, tell your wife Fatima to either cry during the day or to cry during the night. Because during the day we want to work, the crying of your wife doesn't allow us. At night we want to sleep, the crying of your wife doesn't allow us. So tell her either to cry during the day or to cry during the night." And then after a while they came and they told him, "Ya Ali, take your wife out of the city. We can no longer hear her crying." Amir al-Mu'mineen built a house outside of Medina called Baytul Ahzan, the house of sorrow and sadness. Fatima Zahra would hold the hands of Al-Hassan and Hussein and go from early morning, she would go to Baytul Ahzan. She would stay in that house and cry the entire day Cry for the loss of her father Fatima, for her father Rasulullah. Cry for her tragedy. Cry for what the companions have done to her. One day, she asked Amir al-Mu'mineen to request from Bilal to say the adhan. After the death of Rasulullah, Bilal had refused to say the adhan any longer. He said, I was the mu'adhin as long as Rasulullah was alive. Now that Rasulullah has departed, I will never say the adhan again. They came to Bilal and they told him, Ya Bilal, Fatima Zahra has a special request from you. She wants to hear your adhan because your adhan reminds her of her father, Rasulullah. Bilal said, as long as this request comes from Fatima, I will fulfill the request. He stood on the Ma'dana and he started reciting, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And hearing this sound, Fatima Zahra fell on the ground, crying, weeping, and she fainted. They came to Bilal and they told him, Ya Bilal, start reciting, Fatima Zahra has fainted. She would come to the grave of Rasulullah, grab some of the sand from his grave. She would smell it as if smelling the odor of Rasulullah, the scent of Rasulullah. And she would recite, ماذا على من شم تربة أحمد ماذا على من شم تربة أحمد ألا يشم مدى الزمان غواليا صبت علي مصائب لو أنها صبت على الأيام صرنا لياليا قامك يا بويا ما رعاني قامك يا بويا ما رعاني وخلاف عينك مرمراني وبرا المدينة طلعاني ومن البجع ليك منعاني ومن البجع ليك عميان عيوني يابا يابا ورا الباب لما يسوني للحايط وليه عصراني يابا يابا كسروا ضلعي وسقطاني أنا نفيت للباب لكن ما علي حجاب حسبي الرجيس من لذت خلف الباب عصرني وسقط المعز وصدر انحار لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Raise your hands in dua, brothers and sisters. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا الله. اللهم إنا نسألك بفاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها يا الله لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا عيبا إلا سترته ولا خوفا إلا آمنته ولا رزقا إلا بسطته ولا شملا إلا جمعته ولا مرضا إلا شفيته ولا غائبا إلا حفظته وأدنيته ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة لك فيها رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا قضيتها ويسرتها يا أرحم الراحمين، ولأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والعلماء والشهداء. نقرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
Please recite 3 loud salawats for Sayyid Hossein al Qazwini. We invite everyone to please stay for some light refreshments before you leave, and please, if you would like to, have any time with Sayyid, please let me know, and I will let him know as well that, to put that time aside for you, okay? So thank you again for this evening. Don't forget tomorrow night, Saturday night, and unfortunately our last evening, Sunday night with Sayyid Hussein. Please don't miss this opportunity. It doesn't come around all the time for us here in Perth. So thank you again for coming this evening. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.